Okay guys, so in this video we'll be seeing that how do we integrate TanStack table inside a React application. You may already be using the React tables library, but a lot has changed since the version 8. So in this video we are going to implement V8 of the TanStack table. So if we click on get started here, we see that now React table has been renamed to TanStack table, and it is not only available for React, whereas it is available for Solid, Svelte, Vue and Vanilla.js also. In this video, we'll be going to implement TanStack table inside a React application. We are going to do a very basic table that is simply displaying the records inside a table. And then we would be also implementing pagination as well as sorting inside the table. So without wasting any time, let's dive into our code. So here we have a very basic React application scaffolded by V8. So the first thing which we need to do, we need to install the dependency for TanStack table, and that is this dependency. So we need to install this dependency, and that's all what you need to do. So let me clear out the terminal and let me simply do npm run dev to get it up and started. So let me minimize the terminal here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a folder here called components, because as I've told you that we are going to create 3 tables, that is the basic table, the pagination table and the sorted table. So let's create a folder called components, and inside this components I'm going to create a new file called basictable.jsx. Though the power of React tables, that is the TanStack table, shines in TypeScript, but since most of you might not know TypeScript, so I'm simply going to implement it in JavaScript. So here what I need to do, I need to simply export in a very basic component, that is a functional component. So we have this basic table, and I need to import this basic table inside my app.jsx. So just after the React table, I am simply going to import it here, that is basic table. So if we save this, we see that we have something here that says basic table. To get data for this table, what I have done is this, that I've created a file here called mockdata.json file, which contains an array of 100 user records with an ID, first name, last name, email, gender, and date of birth. Though this typically comes from your API, but for simplicity, I have simply hard-coded the data here. And this data, that is mockdata.json file, is coming from this mockaru thing, from where I have generated this mock data containing these fields, and I've simply selected 100 rows here in JSON format, and I simply clicked here, that is generate data. So this data is coming from mockaru. To show this data inside a table, what we need to do, we need to create a table. So let's go to our very basic table here, and a couple of things which you need to know. To create a TanStack table inside a React table, you need to import a couple of things. So let's import a couple of things from TanStack React Table. So the first thing which we need to do, we need to import use React table. Then we need to import get core row model. And then the last thing which we need to import in a flex renderer. And I would be explaining to you that what each of these things means. So firstly, with this use React table hook, what we need to do, we need to create an instance of our table. So we'll say const table equal to use React table. So this table would be containing an instance of our React table. But this React table expects us to pass in some options here, and that is what data we want to show inside our UI, that is inside the table, and then what are the columns for this table. So if I simply copy and paste one of the objects from our mock data, let me keep this object for reference inside our basic table. So this is the kind of data which we have, and we want to display it inside a table. So we need to create some kind of column definitions for our table, that is what each of the individual column should display and what are the headers for that individual column, and that we define in a columns array. But before that, we need to also get the data also, that is this mockdata.json inside our this component. So for that, I am simply going to say import mdata from mock data. It should be mockdata.json. And now we need to use this mdata somewhere inside the component. So we'll say const data equal to use memo, because we need to memoize the data. So we are simply going to use memo here. And if you don't know that what use memo means, I would link a card at the top where you can see that what use memo means. And here I'll simply return mdata, and this should be running on the first render. So we have the data here, and we pass in this data to this data here. And now to define these columns, what I can do, I can define an array here containing in the column definition. So this would be columns would be equal to an array here. To display these records inside the table, we need to create 6 columns, because one is an ID table, one is the ID column, second is the first name column, and so on and so forth. So firstly, we need to define the column here. And typically, since if you are using TypeScript, it would have been very easy for you to define the columns. But since we are in JavaScript, so what I'll do, I'll simply put a JS doc here so we can get some kind of auto completion inside VS Code. So we'll do ** at type, that is a type of this columns array, and it would be import TanStack React Table dot column definition column def, and it would be of any type. Typically this any would be the type of this object here if you are using TypeScript, but here I am simply defining it as any type. And now inside the columns, inside the first column, what we want to display the ID of the record. So we'll say header would be ID, simply like this. That is, we want to display the column header should be ID, and then inside each of the rows inside that column, we want to display this ID, which is the ID number here. So for that, I can simply pass an accessor key here. That is, what accessor key should be used to fetch data to be displayed inside the row in an individual column. So for that accessor key, I would be simply passing an ID here. So that's all what you need to do to display the ID and header here. And if you want to display the footer also, you can pass in the footer also. So footer would be again ID. Like, this is an optional thing here, that is whether you want to display a footer inside your table or not. But for simplicity, I'm simply keeping it this way here. So let's save this. So currently we see that we do not see any table here because this provides us with a table instance, and using that table instance, we are going to generate our table here. So quickly what I'll do, I'll simply grab each and everything from here, and I'll simply copy and paste it here. So the second column would be first name, accessor key would be first name, and make sure that you pass in this accessor key as the key of the object here, and the footer would be again first name. So let me pass it here, first name, and I'll simply fast forward it. So now we have the columns object ready here, or the columns array ready here, with each of these 6 fields that we have that are these fields here. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this table instance to display the table here instead of basic table here. So inside this div, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get all the headers, that is each and individual header of each and every column, and firstly I want to display in the T head. So typically, let me simply write down the skeleton of a table, which is typically like the basic HTML table here. So firstly we have the table, then we have the T head, and inside TH we have the individual header row, and then we simply define in the header like this, that is ID. And then after the T head we have the T body thing. So T body would be again containing a row, and then we have the TD thing that contains the individual cell. So let's say the ID is 1 here, and in a similar way we have the footer also. So tfoot would be containing the footer, then we have the individual row, and then inside the individual row we have the TD thing that contains in the footer title. So let's try to save this thing here, and let's see what we got here. So we see that we are getting the header here, we have the ID here, and then we have the footer here. So this is a very basic table here, and now we are going to use this table instance to render this all automatically. And to generate this table dynamically from this table instance, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a JSX expression here. So table.getHeaderGroups, and I would come to this in a moment, that what all each of these means. So table.headerGroups.map, then we have the individual header group. So you might be wondering that we only have a single line header here, but why we have like a map here inside the get header groups, and I would be coming to that in a moment. So header group, and then what we need to return, we need to return the individual row for that header group. So this would be something like this. So tr individual row, and for each of the row we need to provide some kind of an ID here, that is some kind of a key here, and the key would be coming from header group.id. And now inside that tr we need to take an individual header group, that is the individual header row, and then we need to go through the headers, and then we need to map each of the headers to their individual cell. So I'll say header like this, and then for that individual header I'm going to return a th, that is the heading of that individual column. And now again inside this th I need to provide some kind of a key here, and the key would be header.id. And now inside this thing here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this flex renderer, which we need to import from this TanStack table, and we are going to use this flex renderer to render out the header inside the table. So we'll say flex renderer, and here we need to get in the header.column, that is the individual column, and then we use the column definition, and this column definition is this column definition here, and then we are simply going to get in the header from that thing. And then we need to pass in the second argument to this flex renderer, and that is the header.getContext thing here. So if we save this, we see that we are getting somewhere near our table here. We can remove our hard-coded t-head from here. Now we have the ID, we have the first name, we have the last name, we have the email, gender, and date of birth. And now what we need to do, we need to display all the items that is coming from this m data, that is coming from mockdata.json. So what we need to do inside the t-body thing, we are going to use table.getRowModel, and then we have the individual rows, and then we are going to map each of the rows containing the individual rows like this. And then we are simply going to return a tr from here, and that would be like this. So we are going to return a tr, that is the individual row, and this should be having a key here because we are using map, so we can simply say row.id like this. And inside this tr we are going to loop through the individual cells of that row, so we'll say row.getVisibleCells map, and then we have the individual cell, and finally we would be returning out the individual td for that row or the individual cell. And to get that cell, we can simply say, or we can simply use the flex renderer that we have used at the top inside the header. So we can say cell.column.columndef.cell, and the second argument would be cell.getContext like this. And this is giving an error because we need to provide the key here, and key would be cell.id, simply like this. So if we save this, we see that we are not able to see the table here, and it is because we need to import one more thing from this from this library, and that is the getCoreRowModel thing. And we need to provide in this getCoreRowModel inside our use React Table hook. So we'll say getCoreRowModel would be simply getCoreRowModel, and we need to invoke it. So if I save this, we see that we have our table ready up and working here. So we have 100 records, and we can see all the 100 records here. And we see these one and ID here, and that is coming from our default thing here, that is this thing. So let me remove it from here, and we can also remove this thing from here. So let's save it, and we do not see that hard-coded thing. And now what we can do for the t-foot, I can simply copy and paste the t-head thing, and like I missed the t-head tag here, so it should be t-head, and everything should be inside this t-head thing. So if I save this, nothing changes. We have the header also here. So what I'll do, I'll simply copy and paste this thing inside the t-foot thing to get in the footer, and instead of header groups, I'll simply say get footer groups, and then we have the individual footer group, so footer group, and then I can copy and change wherever it says header group because it's the same thing, footer groups or header dot this thing, and then we have the header thing here, and here we can simply save it, and we should be getting our footer here at the very bottom, and we see that we can see our footer here at the very bottom. So this is how easy it is to like implement React Table. And now it's looking a kind of ugly thing here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use V3 schools like CSS for styling the table. So I can provide this link in the description. So where I'm simply going to choose some CSS file to style the table, and I'm simply going to use this style here that is displaying it all. And what we need to do, we need to click here and we can simply copy this link from here, and let me increase the font size, and we can simply copy this link from here and we can go back to our application, and inside index.html I'm simply going to paste it here. And the second thing which we need to do, we need to wrap our table inside a W3 container, and then table W3 table all would be the class for the table. So let's do that quickly. So inside the basic table we have the div here, so we can provide in a class name W3 container, and for the table let me provide in the class name W3 table all. So if I save this, we should be having a beautiful looking table, and I guess that I should have saved this thing. Yep, so now it is saved. So let me reset the size here, and now we have this table here. And now we see that we have the table working here, but what if we want to customize the individual cell? So like we see that inside date of birth, we are seeing the ISO string here, but we don't want to show the ISO string. We want to show in the actual date of birth. So how do we do that? It is pretty simple to do. To display a custom rendering here, what I can do, I can install in a library here to display in the date. So let me stop the application, and you do not need to import in a library, but I'm going to do so because I like working with dates with this library. So Luxon is the library that I use. So npm run dev like this. So let me minimize the terminal here. And what we need to import from this library would be the date time object. So import something from Luxon, and here I can simply say date time like this. And now to render out this date of birth, currently what I have done here is this, that I've passed in the accessor key here. Instead of only passing in the accessor key, I can also pass in a cell here. That is how I want to format this cell. So I can pass in cell here like this, and this takes in an arrow function here. So we have the info, and then we can return something from this from this thing. So we can say date time dot from ISO, because our dates are in ISO string, and here we can simply pass in info dot get value would be the actual value inside that cell, that is the actual ISO string. And then simply I'm going to say dot to locale string, and here I'm simply going to pass in date time dot date underscore medium. So let's save this. So as soon as I save this, we see that now our dates are properly formatted here. We are only seeing the day, month, and year here. So this is what we want to have here, and this is how you can like render out cells depending on whatever magic you want to do with your cells. So this is what you can do. What if we want to display in the name here, and we do not want to display in the first name and last name in two separate columns, but instead we want to simply have a header called name, and then we simply want to display the full name here below that column. So what we can do instead of displaying this thing like this, so let me comment it out here, and what I need to do, I need to create in a new header here. Header would be name. And then instead of the accessor key, what we need to pass here, we need to pass in the accessor function here. So previously we passed in the accessor key, but here I'm going to pass in the accessor function. And this accessor function should contain the individual row here. And here what we want to render out, we want to simply render out a template string that would be row dot first name. So first name, and then let me like increase the width here. And then we want to simply render out row dot last name. So if I save this, and let me bring it on another line here. So if I save this, we see that now we have the name here, like the first name and last name, and then we have the email, and then we have the gender and date of birth. So this is how easy it is to like customize your things using the accessor function also. And now let me show you one more thing, that is instead of displaying in the name like this, we want to display in the name at the top here, and then we want to have the first name and the last name here below that thing, and that top row would be the individual header group, and this would be again a header group. So therefore we have two header groups here. So therefore I have provided in this thing here, that is get header groups, because currently we only have one header group, but there might be a case that you might have two header groups. Therefore we have done it like this. So now let's demonstrate that also. So let me comment out this thing here, and what I am going to do, I am going to simply provide in a header here that would be again containing a name here, And then inside this thing, we need to pass in columns here. That would be the individual child columns. And inside this child columns, I can simply pass in these two things here. So let me copy and paste it. So let me copy and let me paste it, and let me uncomment uncomment these things here. So now let me also remove last name from here, and this would be like this. So now if I save this, we see that we are getting some gibberish value here that is not required by our table, because we did not provide in a header for like the parent column name for the ID, and again for the email, these are like gibberish here, like these are like rendered incorrectly here. So to fix this, what we need to do, there are some placeholder values that like React table provides by itself. So wherever we are rendering this header column here, that is these columns here, we firstly need to check whether this is a placeholder value, that is header is placeholder, whether if it's a placeholder value, because when we define this header here, this is a placeholder value, and this email and gender and date of birth is again a placeholder value. So therefore, if the header is a placeholder, we can simply pass in null here, otherwise we simply render out the things here. So now we have this thing working here, and in the very similar way, we need to do the same thing for the footer also. So firstly, we need to check if header is placeholder, we render out null, otherwise we simply render out that thing. So now we have that similar thing at the very bottom also, that is the first name, and so on and so forth. So now this is how easy it is to customize your tables using this library here. And now let me show you that how do we do pagination here, because currently what we have here, we have 100 records and those are all shown on a single page. So doing pagination is pretty simple inside this library. So we need to import in a couple of things from this TanStack table. We need to import get pagination row model, and we need to pass in this get pagination row model inside this hook, that is use React table. So we'll say get pagination row model. So let me show it to you. So get pagination row model would be get pagination row model, simply like this. So as soon as you save this, you see that now we are only displaying here 10 records here. And for simplicity, what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove in the footer here, that is table footer here, because like it's too much in the eye. So let's save this. So now we have this thing here. So now to display in the buttons, that is to go to the next page and to go to the first page and then to go to the last page, what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply create in some buttons here after the table here. So this would be a div here containing a couple of buttons. So button, so it should be first page, that is go to first page, and then the second button would be previous page, next page, last page, simply like this. And now if I save this, we have these three buttons here, that is first page, previous page, next page, last page. Now to do click events on this button, we need to implement the on click event listener on these buttons. So on click would be an arrow function like this. And now to go to the first page, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this table instance provided by use React table. So we can say table dot set page index would be 0, because the first page is at index 0. So therefore I am simply providing in 0 here. To go to the last page, what I can do, I can simply say table dot set page index, not page count, but set page index would be table dot get page count -1, because the last page would be like the total value -1. So let me comment out these two buttons for now. So if I save this, and if we click on first page, we are on the first page itself, but as soon as I click on the last page, we see that we have the records displaying from 91 to 100. And if we click on first page, we are able to go to the first page and last page. Now let's handle these two buttons here, that is the previous page and the next page. So let me uncomment it. So what I'll do, I'll use the same table instance. So table instance dot previous page, simply like this, and then table instance dot next page, simply like this. So if I save this, we should be having these buttons working here. We are on the last page. Let's go to the first page. So let's click on next page. we are able to go to the next page. And we see that if we are on the last page and if we click on the next page, we see that we are rendering out an empty table here. And to disable these buttons here, if we are on the last page, we need to handle the disable state of these buttons here. So I can say disable, this button should be disabled if we are not able to get the last page. So get can next page or get can previous page, because we are handling in the previous page button here like this. And for the next page, or let me increase the size here so it is more clear. And this button, that is the next page button, should be disabled if we cannot access the next page. So not table.get can next page. So let's save this, and if we go here, we see that, let's reload the page. So we see that this button is disabled here, previous button is disabled here. We cannot go to the previous page, but we can go to the next page and we can go to the previous page. And if we are on the last page, we cannot go to the next page because we are on the last page, but we can go to the previous page. So this is how easy it is to implement pagination inside a React table. So now let's handle sorting inside this table. So for that, what we need to do, as you may have already guessed, we need to get in this get sorted row model from the table. We need to pass this get sorted row model inside our table hook. So we can pass it like this, get sorted row model, simply like this. And now to handle sorting, what we need to do, we need to create some kind of a state inside our application. So we can say use a state, and the name of the state would be sorting, set sorting, and it should be sorting, set sorting, and the initial state would be an empty array here like this. And we need to of course import the user state hook from React, so we can import that as well. So we are good to go here. And now what we need to do, we need to pass these two values inside this used React table hook. So here we need to pass in the state for the table, and here for the sorting, we simply pass in sorting here. And then on sorting change, so on sorting change, we can simply pass in this set sorting thing here from this user state thing. So if we save this, nothing changes here. We have not yet implemented this sorting thing. So that is pretty simple to do. So here we are simply going to use a shorthand switch syntax to display in the switch buttons that whether we have sorted it ascending order or we have sorted it in descending order. So after the header, where we are rendering out the header, we need to display whether we are in ascending order or descending order, or we are not in any of the orders. So again, we are going to use this JSX expression here. So we are going to show in ascending order this button here. So this should be like the up button. If we are in descending order, so descending, and we need to have comma here. So if we are in descending order, we need to show in the down button like this. And this would be dependent on whether the column is sorted or not sorted. So header dot column dot get is sorted. So this either returns null or it returns a sorted state, whether it's in ascending order or in descending order. And if we cannot get the state, then we simply pass in null here. And now one last thing to do is to make these items clickable, that is these headers clickable. So we can go to the individual cell here, that is this TH, and here we need to pass in the onClick event handler. So onClick would be header.column.get toggle sorting handler. That's all what you need to do. So let me save this and watch what happens now. So if I click on gender here, we see that our gender is sorted here. We are getting this arrow here as well. So just forget about this arrow coming here. We can fix that. So we see that we are able to sort it. And if I click on email, we are sorting in by email here. We are in ascending order here. And if I click here, we are in descending order. And now if we go to the first page, we have these ID all random. If I click on ID here, we see that we are in descending order. And if I click here, we are in ascending order. And if I click again here, we are like not sorted here. So now to fix this arrow showing here as well, what we need to do, we need to do some kind of changes inside the JSX expressions here. So if the header is not placeholder, we are simply rendering out this thing. And at the same time, we are also rendering out this ascending or descending arrow here. And therefore we are seeing this arrow here at the very first place because it should be not displayed here. So what I can do, if the header is placeholder, we can simply provide in a div here. like this, and we can render out the flex renderer inside this div here, like this. So nothing changes here, but this should be again inside a JSX expression like this. And then we need to spit out these things here just after the flex renderer. So if I save this now, we see that this arrow is like fixed here. So we can sort by this thing here, and we can do each and everything here. Like we can even sort out by the date of birth and like this. So now the last thing remains, and that is to filter out the table. So that is pretty simple to do again. So now we need to get in the get filtered row model. As you may have already guessed, we need to pass in this get filtered row model inside our use React table hook. So we can pass in that get filtered row model like this. And then we also need to pass some kind of a state here. So what we can do, we can create some kind of a state here, would be filtering, set filtering, and initial state would be an empty string. And then we need to pass this filtering here. So it should be filter, I suppose, or global filter, though we can also have column filters here, that is filtering on individual columns, but that may be a part of another video. I am simply going to show you global filter that would simply search the entire table. So global filter would be filtering like this. On global filter change would be set filtering. So we have this thing here, and now to do the filtering, what we need to do, we need to create some kind of an input box here just before the table or wherever you want. So I can pass in an input element here, input HTML element with a type of text. Let us remove the name and ID, and here we have the value would be filtering, and then on change would be something. So event here, and then we have the set filtering, and we can simply pass in e.target.value. So e.target.value, and that's all what you need to do to make your tables filterable. So let me increase the font size here. So now let me simply search for Isadore, because that is the first name which I see. So if I do Isadore, we see that we are only seeing this item here. And if I simply want to search out by the year here, that is, we want to only display records in 2021, so I can simply pass in 2021, and now we only have these many records here like this. So now every record is 2021. So if you are here with me till now, let me show you one magic trick. You do not need to create your tables like the way we did here, that is each and everything here inside each and every component wherever you require a table. You do not need to do that. You need to simply create a very basic table component as we did here, like a basic table. And now what I can do, I can go to my app.jsx file, and instead of simply rendering out this basic table, what I can do, I can pass in some props to this table, and that would be the data and the columns here, simply like this. And then what I can do, I can extract this logic, that is this data logic and these columns from here. I can extract it out from here, and instead of creating these columns and data here inside this basic table component, I can go to my app.jsx file, and I can simply paste this thing here. And then I need to fix the imports here. So let me do that. And now our basic table simply expects in data and columns. So what we can do, we can pass those two props from our app.jsx file. So we can pass in these two props here, that is data would be data and columns would be these columns here. So if I save this, nothing changes here. We have a working table here. So you may be wondering that what's so good about it. So the best part about this is that you can simply change the data and columns from any of your components, and you can simply use the simple basic table component. So let me create in some quick data and I'll get back to you. So now we have this movie data.json object here containing a list of movies and their genre and the rating here. So what I can do, I can go to my app.jsx file, and instead of these columns and instead of this data coming from knock data, let me simply do this thing here. So let me do it like this. So instead of mock data, we have the movie data.json file, and this should be like movies like this. And now we can use this movies instead of this m data. So let me pass in movies here, and now let me create in a column definition for this movie instead of these columns. So I can say const movies columns would be an array containing the same thing. So I can pass in header would be id, then we have the accessor key would be id, simply like this. And let me quickly do it because you already know how to do it. So we have these movie columns here, and now what we can do, we can use this movie columns and pass this inside here. So as soon as I save this, we see that we have a working table for movies here. We can go to the next page, we can go back, we can sort by name, we can sort by genre, and we can as well sort by rating here. And in the similar way, we can like again search the table. So if I simply search for Swadesh, we see that we have this table working here. So this is the beauty of this React table component that we just created. So if you want, you can like get it from the GitHub repo. So guys, that's all about this video. So if you have liked the video, do hit the like button. It means a lot to me. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe to the channel. So thank you. Bye bye. Tata. Take care and have a good day and have a great day.